In this video, I'll be replacing the engine oil and oil filter on a Porsche 944 and briefly touching on oil selection and the recommended maintenance interval. When Porsche first introduced these cars, the recommended oil change interval was set at every 15,000 miles for the normally aspirated cars and every 7,500 miles for the turbo cars. That said, in order to increase the longevity of the engine and protect moving components like the rod bearings, the piston rings, and the valve train, most enthusiasts follow an oil and filter change interval of every 3,000 miles, or at least once annually. Let's take a minute to talk about oil specifications for the 944. The owner's manual provides some recommended multi-grade oils for a variety of temperature zones. Oil grades of 20W50 and 15W50 are popular choices because of their high temperature benefits and protection offered for hotter climates. If you end up using one of these applications in a seasonally cooler climate, you'd want to avoid starting the car when ambient air temperatures fall below negative 10 degrees Celsius or 14 degrees Fahrenheit for the 20W50 grade oil, and negative 15 degrees Celsius or 5 degrees Fahrenheit for the 15W50 grade oil. That way you'll avoid damaging the moving parts of the engine due to lack of lubrication at cold start. On the other end of the spectrum, some manufacturers now recommend a 0W40 or a 10W40 grade oil for the 944, and in those usage situations, you'd want to avoid operating the car when outside temperatures exceed 40 degrees Celsius or 104 degrees Fahrenheit. In addition to the oil grade, one extra consideration for the 944 and most older engines from the era is that they were designed to use oils with higher levels of zinc dialkyl dithiol phosphate, or ZDDP. Zinc acts as a friction inhibitor, and research shows that older engines using flat tappet lifters benefit from having zinc present in the oil to keep the camshaft and lifters from wearing prematurely. However, because the zinc and phosphorus found in these additives can negatively affect catalytic converters, and because automotive technology has improved over the decades, the industry has been phasing out ZDDP levels since 1994, when the American Petroleum Institute's SH designation became the industry standard, and levels have been further reduced in each subsequent API rating for most engine oils. It's now generally recommended to use an oil with at least 1,000 parts per million, or ppm, of ZDDP in engines from this era, where levels of around 1,200 ppm were standard for the day. That way you're providing the maximum protection against wear and horsepower loss. So considering the ever-changing specifications and requirements in the industry, let's take a look at some of the oil options available today. Here's a comparison of some of the more popular oil products on the market today, and while this list certainly isn't all-encompassing, it includes an overview of some of those most commonly mentioned on enthusiast forums. To kick off the list, Valvoline's VR1 20W50 and Mobil 1's 15W50 are two options well suited for hot weather conditions that also provide significant anti-wear protection. Valvoline's VR1 is a conventional oil that offers a nominal zinc level of 1,400 parts per million and a phosphorus level of 1,300 parts per million. The Mobil 1 15W50 is a synthetic oil option with 1,300 parts per million zinc and 1,200 parts per million phosphorus. AMSOIL offers some high zinc options in their synthetic Z-Rod series, where we'll find 1440 ppm zinc and 1320 ppm phosphorus. AMSOIL also recommends their European car formula for use in the 944 that features 1100 ppm zinc as an alternative. As far as Castrol products go, the ZDDP levels in their conventional GTX 20W50 have been reduced over the years, and while that was a clear choice in the past for the 944, the zinc level in GTX 20W50 is now only 780 to 900 ppm. However, Castrol has introduced a GTX Classic 20W50 grade oil with high zinc content of 1300 ppm and 1200 ppm phosphorus. Although Castrol indicates it's more tailored to vehicles from the 1960s and 70s, they do have it listed as an option for use in the 944. Royal Purple offers a synthetic oil fortified with 1200 ppm of both zinc and phosphorus in its HPS 20W50 product. It also contains a proprietary synthetic additive called Cinerlec that claims to provide extra wear protection and reduce thermal degradation. Liqui Moly also offers a 20W50 grade oil that contains an anti-friction additive called molybdenum disulfide, or MOS2, which is particularly well suited to air and water-cooled engines with solid lifters. The company claims that it has been tested for safe use with catalytic converters, and it contains a zinc level of between 1150 and 1200 ppm, while the phosphorus level isn't published. Motul now offers a classic 80s 10W40 formula that boasts a ZDDP level of greater than 1800 parts per million, along with a molybdenum additive for protection and performance in vehicles from the 1980s. And as of a few years ago, Porsche introduced a line of classic motor oils of their own design, where a synthetic variant with a viscosity of 10W50 is recommended for all 944 models. It's said to provide optimum wear and corrosion protection, which would be achieved through ZDDP, but after speaking with Porsche, I was told that the precise levels used in the formula are proprietary and therefore not disclosed. It does certainly come in a nicely designed metal can, however, with some attractive marketing that features imagery of the 924, the 944, and the 928. In order to change the oil on your 944, you'll need jack stands or ramps to raise the car, a drain pan and some catch rags, a socket and ratchet or combination wrench to remove the drain plug. A 74mm 14-flute oil filter socket certainly comes in handy, a Mala OC142 oil filter or a Porsche OEM filter. The Mala OC75 is also an option, it's just slightly taller than the OC142. An oil drain plug sealing ring, and approximately 6 to 7 quarts of engine oil. 8 quarts is needed for cars with the plastic sump. Once the tools and supplies are all in order, it's a good practice to run the car for a few minutes to warm up the engine oil before removal. The heated oil will have a better flow rate, and that tends to clear out more of the sludge and deposits from the engine. With the oil warmed up, you can go ahead and raise the front of the car on jack stands or ramps so that the oil drain plug can be removed. If you have the rear skid plate installed on your 944, that piece will need to be removed first. Next, place a catch pan underneath the oil pan area below the drain plug, and using a ratchet or a combination wrench, remove the oil pan drain plug. Once the plug has been removed and oil is flowing, the oil fill cap can be loosened or removed to speed up the flow of oil leaving the engine. This is a good time to inspect the oil pan drain plug for damage, as well as install the new sealing ring onto the plug. And once the engine oil has completely drained, go ahead and replace the drain plug and torque it to a value of 50 Newton meters or 37 foot-pounds. Now that the oil has been drained from the engine, it's time to replace the oil filter, which is tightly positioned on the passenger side of the engine bay. And because these filters mount in a downward direction, they're infamous for dumping oil all down the side of the engine during removal. So it's a good idea to move the drain pan beneath the oil filter area and place some catch rags around and below the oil filter. Here's where the 74mm 14-flute oil filter socket really comes in handy, because the strap-style wrenches and the filter plier tools don't really fit well in the restricted space. But a little extra room can be made by disconnecting the ignition coil plug and raising the headlights as needed. Here we can loosen and remove the oil filter, and the quicker it's pulled out, the less mess it will make. With the old filter removed, a light coating of new engine oil can be applied to the rubber sealing ring on the bottom of the new oil filter. This prevents tearing of the rubber seal during installation and makes removal of the filter a little easier during the next replacement. Next, the new oil filter can be installed just hand tight. There's no need to torque it down significantly, but if you decide to use a wrench, just make sure not to turn the filter more than 1/4 turn past hand tight. It's now time to fill the engine with new oil and check the dipstick level prior to starting the engine. Most cars will take at least 5.8 quarts of oil, so you can start with 5 quarts and top it up from there. Fill the engine oil to the high mark on the dipstick, as some of the oil will be pumped into the oil filter and remain there when the engine is started. With the oil topped up, replace the oil fill cap and then start the engine to circulate the oil and check for normal oil pressure, which should fall between 4 and 5 bar at cold start. If everything checks out, you can shut off the engine and allow it to sit for about 5 minutes so the oil drains back into the pan. While we're waiting, the car can be lowered from the jack stands or ramps, and with the car sitting on level ground, make a final check of the engine oil level and top it off as necessary. As things are wrapping up, don't forget to make note of the date and the mileage on the car so you're prepared for the next oil change interval.